Hi. Okay, if you didn't watch the last video I did, go back and watch it, and here's why. It's about eating as a coping mechanism. It's about stress eating. Now, one of the things that I thought when I was doing that video last is that this is something that I think doesn't get talked about enough, because there's a underlying notion that only some people deal with this, and I think that's complete bollocks. I think if you have a part of your brain that processes emotion, and if you've ever eaten food and you like food, then those things are going to go hand in hand at some point. So if you haven't watched that, I hope that you will. I hope that you don't think that you're the only person that wrestles with that, or that you're the only person that would eat to feel better. It happens to everybody. But the more I thought about this, I thought that the way that we talk to ourselves can make or break what happens next. And so I've come up with 3 things that we tell ourselves that I want you to determine if it's true or not true. And the way that you're going to determine it is to do a little experiment on yourself. So, limiting belief number 1, and I'm going to say this in a really pathetic voice. If I had more willpower, I could stop eating junk food. Have you ever told yourself that? Now, maybe you haven't. But at some point, I know that it feels like we're powerless to make these decisions. But here's the experiment that I want you to do. I want you to go into your kitchen, go into your pantry, and without the feelings of hunger associated with this, I want you to label each thing that you have as red, yellow, or green. Now, we talked about this in one of the webinars a few weeks ago, but this labeling system is what you can totally control 100% of the time. That's considered a green food. So for me, that's broccoli. I don't have any problem overeating broccoli. That's a green food for me, and it just so happens to be green. Now, yellow could be anything that you don't go overboard with, but you realize, like, man, that's kind of a trigger for me to maybe go to the next thing. For me, that's like really fatty meats. And then look around and determine what's the red food for yourself. For me, that's a chocolate cake. If I start with that bad boy, I'm gonna finish it. Doesn't matter how big it is. And so the experiment is this: go around, figure out what's what, and whatever the red stuff is, if it's sitting in your house, I want you to get rid of it. Now, I'm not saying be wasteful. If these are things that you can donate, I think that's a great idea to take this food that can be used in some other capacity, but just get rid of it. And what you'll find is that your willpower is fine. It's your environment that's really shitty. So look, if I worked in a donut shop, I don't know if I'd feel like I had any willpower either. But if I work in a vegetable stand, it's probably a much different set of circumstances that I find myself in. So the lesson here is that it's more about your environment than your willpower. So if you ever find yourself saying that, like, I just don't have any willpower, chances are your willpower's fine. It's just that your environment's not really setting you up for success. Now, limiting belief number 2. You ready? I hardly eat anything, but I can't lose any weight at all. Have you ever told yourself this? That you're in a caloric deficit, but still you weigh the same amount? Now, there's some science here that calories in, activity level, does correlate and is a cause and effect to what you weigh. But more than likely, what's happening is that you're underestimating how much you're actually eating. So the experiment here, and I don't want you to roll your eyes at this, is to record everything you eat. Now, this doesn't have to be complicated, and there's such a stigma around this, like track and measure what you eat. It doesn't have to be that complicated. This could be in the Notes app of your phone, recording every single thing that you eat. This could be going to MyFitnessPal, or the app we use is Seismic, to actually track and pay attention to this stuff. It could be, and we've had people do this a ton of times over the years, just snapping a picture of everything that you consume. Now, you may have still rolled your eyes, but the question I have for you is, have you actually done it? Oh, you have? For how long? For a day? No, it's not good enough. This has to be a whole week. Because look, I can make anything look great for a day, but I need 7 days worth of data for myself to really grasp if I'm under eating or if I'm not. And here are the culprits. It's not the pictures of my plate when I sit down for dinner. It's all the things that I'm cleaning up for my kids' meals that I need to write down. It's all the things in transit. It's all the things in passing that I'm just popping in my mouth that I really need to record. And what you'll find, and what the lesson here is, that it's easy and it's incredibly common to underestimate how much you actually eat. So that's experiment number 2. Now the last one is this. I seriously can't handle being hungry. Look, of all these 3, that's the one that I tell myself the most. That I actually can't handle not eating food. That if I go more than 3 hours, I may die. And it's not actually true. You know, when you say it out loud, it kind of sounds silly, but I think this initial feeling of hunger can be very annoying. It can feel debilitating at first. It can be an extreme inconvenience, but it doesn't kill you. So the experiment that I have for you, if you struggle with this and it's like, man, I've got to eat, and so you sometimes turn to food that's less than optimal just because you feel like you have to eat, is to remind yourself that you actually don't. And the experiment is to go for a 24-hour fast. Now look, if you have a medical condition, if you're hypoglycemic, if you struggle with disordered eating, or if for some reason you know that complete food restriction is going to lead to a wheels-off scenario, then maybe this isn't the one for you. But if you've never done a fast, and I'm talking water, unsweetened tea, and black coffee only, it is one of the most educational things that you can do. And here's the reason for that. 3, 4, 5 hours in, you're going to go through those same feelings, but it doesn't last all day long. And you get past 4, 5, 6 hours, and you realize you're actually fine. And the most educational aspect of this experiment is to realize that you don't have to always respond to those initial feelings of hunger. And in fact, those initial feelings are great signals that we do need to respond to on a normal basis, but it doesn't require this desperation that we typically respond to it with when we do feel really hungry. So that's it for today. I hope that you take me up on one of those. I hope you treat yourself like your own little experiment. I can tell you, over the last 15 years, if anything comes on the scene, instead of me just talking shit about it, well, I'll just experiment with it myself, and I'll come up with my own conclusions. So if you find that you have these limiting beliefs, I hope that you'll come up with your own conclusions for if they're true or if they're not. And I got a little secret for you. They're not. See you next time.